Crystalis is a game I remember playing years ago. This is one I actually have a a physical cart still for this one. And I'm not a game collector. I'm more of just a game player. But I do remember this one. And last time I was playing it before this review, the save state worked as long as the cart was in the in the Nintendo. But as soon as you pulled the cart out, toast, because the battery's dead in it. However, I'm very familiar with the first two areas. Kind of the rest of the game kind of faded in my mind until now. Now I've had a chance to kind of replay it. I have once again awakened from hibernation and picked up the Wind Sword to revisit the game I liked from the early 90s. Now, Crystalis was released in 1990 by SNK. Now, this is the same SNK that is known for the Neo Geo. Crystalis is an action role-playing game with kind of an interesting narrative and some quick play style, so it's pretty good. Let's dive in, see what it's all about. First, let's talk about the story. There's a nice kind of intro that kind of explains that there's been a war and that the survivors have put our hero in a cryogenic sleep chamber. 100 years have now passed, and the hero wakes up to a civilization that was kind of medieval and has mutated creatures running around. So all the science and the advances of technology have been abandoned, and the survivors kind of spent their time studying the ways of magic. That's always been a thing, is magic and technology. They're highly related, but usually only have one or the other. In this case, they abandoned the technology. There are 4 wise men and a mysterious girl that kind of guides them and teaches them magic to the hero. Now they're trying to stop Dragon, who has kind of got access to the floating tower that's kind of floating above the world. He's trying to use that tower to gain access to the weapons that dominate the world. And our hero has got to collect 4 different elemental swords. They got the sword of wind, fire, water, and thunder. And these swords can combine into a legendary sword called Crystalis, or name of the game here. Even though there's kind of a lot of lore, it's kind of slowly revealed throughout the game, so it's not too overwhelming to pick up. The townspeople generally have short things to say, and it doesn't take long to just kind of run through the whole town, pick up everything that they're going to say, and be able to move through the game. Now, kind of walking through this game, I'll give you kind of high level kind of how the game flows. You first off walk out from the machine that's in the cave and wander into town. You pick up the wind sword, then you go off to fix a windmill. This kind of gets things moving. You learn about the wise men that guides you to the next area through the mountains. In the next town, you need to find a statue that's been lost in the fields. Returning the statue gives you a gas mask that allows the journey more into the swamps with poisonous gas. The wise men teach you some magic. It helps you to get talking to the Swamp King. And once you get talking to the Swamp King, you can then rescue a kid, get the fire sword, and fight a giant bug that's kind of plaguing the area. That's one thing that looks pretty good in the game, is you have they have some pretty good sprite work. The bosses are definitely large. So next it's off to Mount Saber to upgrade the Wind Sword. You get the Tornado Bracelet that powers up the sword some more. You also pick up the spell Teleport, which is very handy, allowing you to warp from town to town without having to use like warp boots or anything. You learn that the town of Leaf, which is the first town, is kind of captured and is now working in mines trying to mine metal armor for the soldiers of Dragon. And in the north route of Mount Saber, you can go rescue the town and then fight General, I'm going to try to pronounce his name, General Kelbyquick. In the town of Portla, this is a name of a port town. The queen here is quite mysterious, kind of comes in and out of the town, but stays in the same area, so it takes a bit of detective work to kind of figure out what's going on between the queen and the fortune teller. And this is where the paralyze spell comes to use, where you can paralyze some of the people in the town to get by him. Paralyzed shots are now also being used by the monster, so it gets kind of annoying. After you get the fruit of lime from the queen, you can then rescue some of the people trapped in stone. And then you can get the sword of water. New water sword with the water ball power can now make ice bridges that allow you to go into new areas. One of which you need to get to a cave to get a fog lamp. And that lamp is needed to travel in the seas. Taking the boat out of Portia, you can now go to Joel Island. You can ditch the boat fairly quickly and call on a dolphin that lets you ride around on the sea. In this area, you have to kind of take on the evil spirit island and Sabard's castle. Once you get past that and you can then go past whirlpools using a golden statue. And then you then eventually wash up on the shore of the town Swan. Yeah, from Swan you can make your way to Charon Fort in Mount Hydra. The fort is kind of like a meeting place of all the wise men, then teach you magic along the way. They send you on a quest, but when you go on that quest, when you come back, the whole the wise men's fort's been attacked by Dragon's forces, and they killed off most of the wise men there, and you have to fight off another one of the generals from Dragon. After the battle, you travel to Goa, which is most like a Dragon's fort, and you break down this wall, and then you have to go find these generals. Find all the rest of the generals again. You've been battling, they've been leaving. And so now you have to actually go and find them, defeat them. They're a bit challenging, but after you defeat them, you can eventually go through a cave that leads to a desert. At this point, you need to collect the bows of heaven, the moon bow, and from the Amazonian town, and the sun bow on Mount Hydra. You'll use these eventually to get past the pyramid part in the pyramid to go fight the bosses at the end. But in order to get the sun bow, you can need to have flight magic, and they get that flight magic after beating the generals. So unfortunately, that's why you have to loop around to go back to Mount Hydra. After you get all the bows, make your way back down to this town called Sahara. So once you get to the Sahara town, then it's off to the Great Pyramid. The Great Pyramid has two parts. There's an upper level and a basement level. In both areas, you kind of have to fight Emperor Dragon in two forms. I had trouble with getting the Bow of Truth, so use this two Sun Bow and the Moon Bow. And then you're supposed to get this Bow of Truth from Aztecia, one of the main wise men. So you get that Bow of Truth, but for some reason I had a hard time getting it to work. Like, it somewhat worked, and sometimes it wouldn't. And it said it gave me the bow, but it didn't give me the bow, so I had to go back and grab the bow, so very kind of cryptic. Yeah, once you get that, you can get Shin Dragon to show up, and then now you can have that kind of final battle with him. So, but after Dragon's defeated, then there's the tower. So Macia is kind of the other cryogenic sleeper. It was been sleeping just like you that's now woken up. She teleports you now to the tower. And so in the tower you have to kind of just fight out the enemies, destroy them until the stairs appear. Which is kind of different than the rest of the game, so it's one place you can get stuck a little bit. But you just fight all the enemies, the stairs appear, you battle your way up through the temple, up to the 4th floor. Then Maciel will create the ultimate swords from the other swords. You only get to use that sword once to take out the last boss, which is the dying of the computer. It's a very easy battle with just a couple hits will kill it. After that, the game wraps up with a sweet ending and a new beginning for the world. Alright, let's check out the ratings. So, on graphics, I give the graphics an A. They're really good. I think the environments are interesting and clear. There's a lot of different enemies. They do reuse, but they don't like reuse super heavily. They do make new enemies and things. It kind of changes up the gameplay and things done really well, I think, generally. Unfortunately, my game had some glitches, so you'll see that in some of the screenshots and things going on. There's some glitches there, but it's not seen in the console, but nothing major there. So graphics definitely really good. The music also give an A. There's a lot of great music in this game. My 11-year-old son came in when I was playing it and he said, "I don't know what that game is, but I like the music." Even the music does get quite repetitive, and especially when you're doing a lot of the farming and grinding, you're going to hear that loop over and over and over again. But luckily it's fairly easy. It's easy to listen to. It doesn't get quite, doesn't quite get annoying, so that makes it nice. Now I'll give the gameplay a B. And the action and movement of the character make the game feel pretty quick paced. You can move around really well. The areas and the caves are quite large, so there's a lot to explore. I like being able to dodge, fairly easily. Like, you can outrun the bullets in a lot of cases. However, the enemies respawn quite a bit, especially the flying ones, and they get really annoying and start driving nuts. They'll fly in through the screen and smack you a lot of times. But I think the big thing is kind of the hit detection on the enemies. It often feels like you get close to the enemy, but you're not quite there, but then you'll get hit and weird, and then get pushed. This game definitely has knockback, both for the enemies and for you. Definitely nice for the enemies get knocked back, but when you get knocked back, that can be kind of really annoying, especially when there's pits. The bosses are challenging, but they're not too bad, so you can kind of work them out. So usually it's just a matter of getting the right sword with the right boss. I found some items that were kind of difficult or weird to use. Like I mentioned, the light bow. I'd select it as normal, like you would normally do, but getting it to actually fire was hit and miss. I had no idea what triggered it. Only some enemies can get hit with the right sword. And so this means in some places, like in the caves especially, you'll frequently be switching weapons. And you have to pause, go select the weapon, select the power-up to hit it, and then go back, and then you'll hit the thing, and then what gets really annoying is there's a couple cases in the game where you have multiple enemies on the screen that can only be hit by certain weapons, so then you're like flipping back and forth with the swords trying to kill them. Yeah, it's really annoying. And of course there's the enemies respawning, so if you get back and you have to go back through a loop, you have to do that again. Keep flipping through the items, flip through that, and fight again. So that's kind of a bit tricky on the gameplay. One of the reasons it's down at B. Now, as far as the design, I give this a B-. So let me talk about the good parts of the game. Let's start with those. The good thing is the storyline's really good and interesting. It keeps you moving through it. There's a lot of game here, so the areas are kind of expansive. There's a lot of variety, from the meadows to the mountains to the oceans to the desert. There's also a variety of new weapons, magic items, and magic weapons and things that kind of change up the gameplay. I think that's really quite good. It keeps you involved, and there's also a lot to explore there. Now for the bad parts, the game's quite linear, and it feels like it would be more open, but you really have to do X to trigger event Y, and so it's easy to get stuck in some cases. But when you combine it with that open world, so you kind of feel like you should be able to skip or move on, it kind of feels weird to having such a linear restrictions on it. It leads to kind of getting stuck or trying to figure out what to do and where to go. I think this is why I got stuck in Area 2 fairly often. Every time I picked up the game, I'd get stuck around in there somewhere. These days, there's guides that can get you unstuck from game facts or something, so you can definitely go to those. The caves and indoor areas are quite mazy. They definitely kind of loop. There's several that loop around, or they have many doors that loop. Generally, though, work your way through them. I mean, you get turned around, but you can kind of work your way there. I think the big issue for me in the design is just the long farming sessions. You have to do this almost in every area. You gotta go now grind for money, go grind for levels, and it's usually like a 30-minute to an hour grind to get where you need to be or to get the right level. The last thing I found cryptic was right near the end. You have to fight a series of bosses. You need to use the right weapon to hit them. However, if you're not at the right level, it won't be, you won't be able to hit the boss at all, and it doesn't really give you any indication that you're not doing anything, so you just sit there and battle till you die. This wasn't clear to me, like wasn't clear that I need to be at a certain level, because some of the bosses in the last area you have to fight 4 bosses, and you get one of the later areas, and you get there, you fight the 2 bosses with level 13, and all of a sudden you can't hit the last 2 bosses, so you have to find a place where you can grind and get up to that right level. The playtime for this game is 20 to 25 hours, so it's pretty significant, but definitely fun. Let's wrap this up. Crystalis has always been one of those games that have kind of captured my attention, and I kind of look back on with fondness. After replaying it, I kind of realized that it's quite a big game, and it's got times where it's a little bit tedious, mainly due to that farming, like I mentioned. But still, despite that, still a great game. I really enjoyed replaying it. I recommend you giving it a shot. And if you've never played it, or if you haven't played it in a while, give it another go. Thanks for watching.